There are more and more people out there saying that our debt does not matter, that this explosion of debt from our federal government, as well as a lot of corporations, does not really matter. I've decided to bring on an expert and a good friend here, Jonathan Rose of Genesis Gold Group. He is an expert in all things gold and just debt minded. I mean, the things that impact the gold market, inflation. He is a sharp tack, and I'm so glad to have you back on the show, Jonathan. Just bring us up to date, kind of where we are with the federal government and its debt. It's accelerating, isn't it?
It is, and a pleasure to have me back on the show. Thank you, Steve. And you're right. You have people that say, debt doesn't matter. And you know what, folks? Debt does matter. And we can't keep printing money and not expect any ramifications. So to date, roughly, the US economy is in debt at a tune of over $34 trillion. And it's too big of a number to even fathom. We kind of get numb to it because people just think, oh, it's another digit, it's another number. But what people need to think about is the end game. What does that actually mean? And $34 trillion in debt, we're currently amassing $1 trillion every 90 days or so. And that $1 trillion isn't because we're printing more money. This is the scary part. It's because that's the interest that we're paying on the existing debt. And what's even more staggering is that interest of $1 trillion every 90 days is actually more money than our US national defense budget. So we're spending more on debt monthly than we'd be able to give to our armed forces. And when you look at outside of the trade deficit on all this money going to, foreign aid, and we're just piling on the debt, piling it on, you can only kick the can down the road for so long before something bad happens. And even our head of the Federal Reserve, Jerome Powell, he's come out and said to us that, look, folks, there's a lot of bad debt out there. Forget the debt clock. We have banks that are holding bad debt as well in the tunes of billions of dollars because a lot of commercial buildings are empty. Regional banks are not able to pay the mortgage back on these buildings. And again, that bad debt is also going to cause more regional bank failures. So this is, coming up on the horizon. It's actually a lot nearer to us right now. I feel there's a lot of other news that we're focused on. Obviously, what's happening with the protests at these universities, and really it's kind of taking away from the focus of the markets, where if people are have stock portfolios or IRAs or 401ks and they're heavily invested in these types of stocks, financial assets, these are the people that are going to get hurt the most when we kind of fall off of this fiscal cliff, and there's going to be ramifications from the fact that we can't pay this debt. Debt does matter. And it's almost like, Steve, if you have a credit card and you keep borrowing money, you don't pay it back, well, the bank's going to cut you off, and then you don't pay back that credit card bill. Then all of a sudden your credit gets hurt. You're uncredit worthy. You can't take out any more loans. There's a big X against your big dirty mark against your name. Well, that's eventually what happens with the US dollar. We're getting downgraded by Moody's credit agencies to say that we're unsafe as a currency, and this chain reaction has already started. So yes, debt does matter. I'm very concerned about the national debt. It's not going to go away overnight, and I think the only real logical answer is to understand what's about to happen next, and really how you can be proactive, prepare for that, and protect yourself, especially if you have assets tied to the market.
Yeah. So when this blows out, Jonathan, that's the big question I think is on everybody's minds. What's that going to look like? What specifically would we see when this really blows up?
Well, I think another telltale sign here is that the other countries, China, huge economy of scale, they're not buying back our debt right now. They're selling U.S. treasuries, and you know what they're buying? They're buying this stuff, gold. Okay, so the warning signs are being waved. The bells are being rung, and people should really pay attention. What does this mean? What does it look like? Well, some ideas that I think top economists mostly tout is that a huge correction in the stock market. Could it be a global recession because a lot of assets are denominated in US dollars and settled in dollars, like oil, for example? And that's why you have BRIC nations that have banded together, trying to move away from settlement in US dollars and settle in a reserve currency that is backed by, you guessed it, gold. So I think people should, really pay attention to what's going on. I don't think there's going to be an exact disaster plan rolled out of where this bubble pops, what to expect. But the main item that I would be expecting is a major correction in the stock market. It could overflow, obviously, into real estate with bank failures that Jerome Powell has said is going to transition quicker and quicker this year. That's going to lead to panic. Panic leads to fear. And fear leads to sell-offs in the market. So again, being proactive instead of reactive. That's why I've always been a big advocate for gold. I'm not saying don't have stocks. I've owned stocks for many years and many other assets. But the key here, I guess I should say, is diversification. And diversification means having something in your portfolio that's going to be a counterweight, something that goes down. There we go. Something goes down, something goes up. The item that goes up is precious metals. Obviously, gold is considered a currency. Silver's also been having a stellar year. Gold is up. I'm going to look at my trade screen here. 5-year gold's up, nearly 82%. Now, does that mean in the next 5 years, gold's going to do another 82%? Well, anyone that tells you yes, that should be a red flag, because no one should be able to guarantee you anything. However, if you look at the fundamentals and you understand, the roadmap of what's coming, I think, yes, gold can definitely go up another 81%, if not higher. I think $3,000 an ounce for gold's on the table. I believe $5,000 an ounce isn't too much further down the road, especially when you look at assets like cryptocurrencies, Bitcoin. You've got an invisible cryptocurrency called Bitcoin that no one can really fully understand, comprehend, or explain, no matter how often you try to talk about it. Rise up to nearly $70,000 a token. Yet you have a precious metal, which is also in limited supply, that actually has a proven track record for hundreds, if not thousands of years, that is truly a precious commodity. And I would rather have all of the gold in the world than all of the Bitcoin in the world. That's just my personal preference. Some people may disagree with me on that. But again, understanding the role that an asset like gold can play is really the important one, because it's almost like you go to the supermarket, you pick up a tin of beans and you see what you're getting. It's like gold. You pick it up. Read what it says here. Fights against inflation, protects me from market turmoil, protects against worldwide instability. So it really does do what it says on the can. And I think that's why it's an important part of a balanced portfolio, or an integral part of a balanced portfolio. And people just need to really get an understanding and really an education, I should say, of why they want to hold on to an asset like gold in a retirement plan, or just keeping it at home.
Yeah. As a tax accountant, I've seen people's portfolios. I've seen the what it looks like on the other side of wealth management, the results of that. And I think what I've heard from a lot of wealth managers, and what I've seen them counsel a lot of folks, is that if they have a mix of stocks and bonds, and then potentially even some treasury bonds in there, that is a sufficient diversification. What would you say to that type of advice?
It's definitely a good diversification strategy, but it's not complete, especially when you have China selling all the treasuries, which accumulate about 8% of our financial market. So that could actually hurt people. Now, I used to be a registered financial consultant. I've worked for Merrill Lynch, Morgan Stanley. I've gone over to Asia, helped AIG, HSBC set up bank depositories. So I definitely know a thing or two about the minds of financial brokers. And when you work under a brokerage house, you have an umbrella, and that umbrella makes you sell whatever products they have under that umbrella. Like you mentioned, could be treasuries, could be bonds, could be a stock portfolio. But if you sell outside of that umbrella, that's called selling away. And as a financial advisor, you actually get penalized, a slap on the wrist, or can lose your license because you're selling products outside of the umbrella of that brokerage house. So again, it's a big no-no. So, they want you to sell products, technically, Steve, that the commission is going to go to the brokerage house, buys and sells, nickel and dime, and crumbs make up a loaf. Okay, so that's how these brokerage houses look at when they try to sell you and bring you in and out of these products. The problem with gold for these people is there is no nickeling and diming with gold. It's an asset that doesn't really charge an in and out commission because you're holding on to it. So technically, there isn't enough money for these big brokerages houses to sell gold unless they say, well, let's sell you a gold mining stock, right? And like that's going to give you gold exposure. Kind of, but you're also investing in the management team of that firm, who's the CEO, who's the board of directors. If you don't find any gold in the ground, you're not really making any money as a shareholder. So the safest way to invest in gold is to physically hold on to it yourself. Now, I also work with financial advisors and wealth management teams, and the good ones out there that actually are more independent and they understand the value and the role that gold plays do recommend gold to their advisors, because I have a lot of financial advisors that have annuity clients and they send them our way and they want them to diversify with gold because they know that the annuities, the bonds, or the treasuries that they offer through their brokerage houses can't offer them the same sophistication or the same protection that a tangible asset can actually provide. So there's definitely a role for it. A good financial advisor, if you're working with one, will recommend gold. And if they don't, I personally feel that's a bit of a red flag, but that should just basically be a sign saying, yeah, I'm going to get a smack on the wrist here because I'm selling away. And selling away as a financial advisor under the synopsis of that broker-dealer umbrella, they don't want to lose their job. So again, that's why they wouldn't necessarily offer it to you.
Yeah, I'm so glad to have you on here because you're such an expert on, you have a lot of that experience from behind the scenes. And one of the things that I think people don't realize often too is when you diversify with stocks and bonds, oftentimes you're investing in the same companies. And just the Wall Street Journal just, was it yesterday, had this out that defaults are at historic levels, both banks as well as we're seeing a lot of businesses go down. But a lot of businesses have their stock, but then they also have debt that's out there or bonds that they're putting out there. And so it's really kind of one risk. It appears diversified, but maybe it's not so diversified. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, they're basically double dipping. They're trying to sell the stocks in the company. They're trying to sell the bonds in the company. That really wouldn't be a diversification strategy. That would really be a strategy for the brokerage houses to make more money from you. And, if you're going to buy stocks, I truly believe in being in big cap stocks. This is my own recommendation. Don't take this for financial advice. But it's funny, people bring me on their shows and I heard someone touting a great stock. And I said, and then they brought me on and I said, I was in the green room and I heard you and I just want to save your behind and let your audience know that that wasn't financial advice, because I'm so used to compliance people coming in my ears and say, you can't say this, you can't say that. And again, if you're going to diversify with stocks, I personally like, big cap stocks. I wouldn't double dip into a shareholder stock in the company and then buy the bond or an underlying asset in that company too. Diversification is key, especially in this market, because 2024, Steve, I've been saying, is the year of turmoil. We're seeing this right now, even away from financial markets. We're seeing all the turmoil at these campuses with all these, pro-Hamas Palestinian rallies. We're seeing it. I know, right? And then we're seeing it overseas with, aid, more and more aid going over to the Ukraine. They're sending billions of dollars over there. I'm all for helping people, but I also truly believe charity starts at home. And, when you look at the streets of Los Angeles or San Francisco, they're decimated with people with drug problems, alcohol problems, homelessness, mental health issues. And, this government, this current administration, in my opinion, they're not doing anything to help these people. We need to invest in schools. We need to invest in our teachers that are teaching these, young, precious minds the that are, begging for this information, and they're getting taught all types of crazy things. My wife and I were talking about this the other day. My kids go to a faith-based school. We're a Christian family, and call us old-fashioned, but I believe blue is blue and pink is pink, and you can kind of read into that as you want. But a lot of these other schools, the garbage that they're teaching our kids, it's just like, how do you destroy a country? It's from the inside out. And whoever the establishment, the woke mob, these George Soros, woke funds funding all these people to kind of distract, dismantle, and decimate our good American values. The fabric of society is being tugged on right now, and it's beginning to unweave and unweave more and more and more. And being a pivotal election year, and I say the year of turmoil, what's going to be next? Is it the next, they just reported recently a new strain of monkeypox in Africa, okay? Is it going to be a supply chain issue? Is it the next bird flu? Is it the new shot that we're going to need for the next, COVID 2.0? So there's a lot of distractions going on and fear. And it's almost going to be like, leading up to the election, people are going to be too fearful to even leave their house because of all the riots, uncertainty, noise pollution that's going on. And again, is it just a bigger distraction for the bigger stage? And again, I think the answer to that is yes. So there's a lot of distractions out there, but we don't have a magic pill that can make this all disappear. You just have to have your head screwed on correctly, your feet planted firmly on the ground, understand what's happening right now, and do your best to protect yourself and your family. And that also includes, preparedness for home, right? I have long-term food shelf preparedness. I look at my finances. I make sure long-term survival for financial assets. So it's really having a game plan and not being reactive, but being proactive, especially during, I think, a pivotal year being an election year.
Yeah, as a lot of financial advisors will say, and this is basic financial planning 101, right? As you get closer to retirement, you should have more of your assets in safe assets, assets that are stable, and you should be moving away from risky as you move into retirement. And the same thing is, as you see risks and dangers in society escalate, you should be pivoting more and more of your resources into safe assets like gold or precious metals. What are your thoughts? Like, if you had somebody sitting right in front of you and they're like trying to figure out what percentage of their retirement should be in gold, what are some questions you'd ask them? What are some thoughts that you would kind of give them?
Yeah, it's a great question because everybody's different. But I feel that the general consensus of people we speak to, they understand the value of gold. I don't think that's something that people need to be sold on per se. They understand the value of gold. It normally comes to a question of, well, if they're speaking to us, like, well, who's this guy, Jonathan Rose? Who's Genesis Gold Group? There's a big decision when you're talking about your retirement. Big decision, because you've worked your whole life for this nest egg. So just like in life, you have these big decision points down the road, like meeting your life partner, your wife. Big decision, buying your first house, big decision, stressful too. Your retirement, rolling it over, big decision. So you want to make sure that you're working with the right company, the right people, and then you got that good, warm and fuzzy feeling about that this is who I want to be talking to about my financial assets and rolling them over. And then it's a question of, looking at their goals. Is this a short-term hold? Is this a long-term hold? Are they looking at moving a percentage, 5 to 20% of their portfolio over? Are they looking at just rolling everything over? Because as you mentioned, people who are getting to retirement, they're looking at diversifying. And a lot of the times that doesn't mean just having a slither of gold. That means getting out of the market. So what we found is that people who do roll over their IRAs or 401ks and they're holding metals in a retirement account, what I've noticed is about 90 to 95% of them that take RMDs and they start taking these distributions when you have to start pulling, is they are actually, and this is what I like about a gold IRA, by the way, is that when you sell, you have the option of liquidating and saying, I want the cash, or liquidating and saying, ship me the metals, I want to hold on to it. And I found out that 90 to 95% of our customers want the metal shipped to them as a distribution. And when I ask them why, the answer is pretty much parallel throughout every single person I speak to. It's because they want to hold on to a tangible asset that they feel is going to be worth more in value compared to the US dollar. And their main argument for that is because everything's becoming more expensive and the dollar's becoming worth less and less. And folks, that's inflation, right? It's very insidious. We don't see it, but it's evaporating the purchasing power. So, people need to feel comfortable with, first of all, who they're working with. Then they need to figure out, are they looking at rolling over everything, or are they looking at rolling a percentage into metals? And then they need to look at, are they looking at cashing this out back into cash, or do they just want strategies to take possession of this and hold it at home? So everyone's a little bit different, but I would say the consensus is you kind of hit the nail on the head there, that people are looking for a change. And I just like to acknowledge that change is a big deal and it shouldn't be taken lightly. And it takes not a knee-jerk reaction, and it takes a little bit of an education and understanding of what that looks like for people and their family, and getting a solid game plan so they can execute it, and more importantly, have a full sleep of, a good restful sleep, knowing that they've made the right decision.
I just wish our government would take that advice and diversify into gold. That would be wow, how much more solid would our country be and our government be if we balanced the budget and actually had a bunch of our assets in precious metals. We don't even know how much is in Fort Knox anymore because no one's allowed to go in there.
Well, I'll give you a little insight, okay? Because I'm pretty connected to the gold industry, and I used to work closely with a gentleman named of Edmund Moy. And Edmund Moy was Ed Moy, his name is M-O-Y. He was appointed the U.S. Mint Director. I forget which number, like number 36 or 39, I forget now, because Ed Moy set up Homeland Security under President Bush, and he did such a great job. President Bush said, okay, Ed, I'll give you any job in the cabinet. What do you want to do? And he's like, I want to be US Mint Director. I've always wanted to do that. Boom, he got the job. So, and Ed was telling me the whole story about this. And we were sitting down over lunch, and he's the director of the US Mint. And I said, Ed, I've got to tell you this because I've been in the gold industry since, 1997, before that financial markets in London. And a common question that I get asked, and I can't answer it truthfully because I've never been, you've been to Fort Knox. A lot of people question me, is there gold in Fort Knox or is it a hoax? And he laughed at me and he says, unequivocally, I could tell you, and he looked at me straight in the eye, that I've been in there and it's full of gold. They're not using it for anything, right? But it's full of gold. There is gold in Fort Knox. Now, I personally are kind of on the same page as you, where I think we should be on a gold standard and the US dollar should be backed by something. Right now it's backed by nothing. We came off at the gold standard and we had free trade, and then we started printing money. Hence today, like we're talking, $34 trillion in debt. And where's the accountability? I was reading a story the other day, and it's not so much to do with debt, but it's to do with accountability, that in California, $26 billion under Gavin Newsom they needed you doing the books, Steve, because for accounting wise, there's big gaps in the $26 billion budget, and they don't know where this money's gone. It's been unaccounted for. And I feel like as a taxpayer who's paying for countries and states and these programs that are meant to be furthering our communities, which obviously they're not, where are the checks and balances? Like, as a taxpayer, because I don't even know the answer to this. Maybe you do. I don't know. Like, there should be. How do we know the money's going where it's going? We just know that there's a deficit, there was a surplus, there's gaps, there's money missing. And something else that I read that outraged me was that our military Air Force, they grilled somebody very high up in government to do with spending for military aircraft, where this gentleman held up a bag of ball bearings, just like the metal small bearings that are used in machinery for the airplanes. $90,000 they're paying for a bag of ball bearings, but the real cost is $100. So kind of, you know what I mean? This is why I get really mad, and I'm talking about, yes, deficits, but then where's the accountability? We've got money missing. We're paying $90,000 for a bag of ball bearings for the military, which have been exposed, just cost us $100. And that just whiffs of corruption. And, we're meant to be a stand-up government that we can trust and rely on. But I can't trust and rely on the current administration when I read and I hear terrible stories like this, because I feel that there's a lot of underhanded stealing going on and there's no accountability with the money spending. And for me, I think that's one of the biggest bones that I think that every taxpayer should have an uproar about is knowing that where are our tax dollars going to further and better this obviously great nation.
Yeah, so many good points, and thanks for just dropping pearl after pearl of insight. That's we need to all be pivoting towards safety. We all need to be thinking through where our assets are, where, whether even real estate is, and that's a whole nother topic, right? Whether real estate is a safe place to be, whether the stock market's a safe place to be, whether investment even in municipal bonds in these in Chicago and San Francisco is a wise thing to be. Even U.S. Treasury bills, is that even safe these days? So I want to thank you for coming on. And folks, if you want to know more about how you can secure some of your assets, Jonathan and his team would just love to talk with you. And as you can see, he's a great guy, and he has a team of great people who would like to educate you and answer your questions and not put high pressure on you. I know that's been some of the in the industry. There's been a lot of people who have not acted that way, and I just love the fact that my inbox is filled with just people saying good things about you, Jonathan, and I don't have anyone saying anything bad about their experiences with you. That you and your team just have done a fantastic job for our audience, and I look forward to you being able to help more of the folks in our audience out with that. You have any parting closing thoughts?
No, I just appreciate coming on. Obviously, I threw a lot at you at the end there, but these are things that even I look for answers to, right? But when it comes back to the lowest common denominator is you can't trust the current administration, and you just really need to be able to do things for yourself. The government isn't going to back up your own dollars, so you need to do it yourself. We also have a definitive gold guide for your audience, and it can kind of show them different types of products, coins, bars. And again, getting an education is key. So when they call in, they can ask for the definitive gold guide. It's absolutely free to your viewers. And it's really good to that's the first rung on the ladder, so to speak, to kind of get a better understanding of products in precious metals and how they can help you protect assets like retirement accounts.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Jonathan. We'll have to have you back on here really soon, and we will send people over to you. So friends, if you want to check out Jonathan and his team, just look at the pinned comment down below. Also on the screen, there will be a link right there that you can click on and go right to that sign up form. Or like I said, you can go to the pinned comment down below. The phone number is right there. If you do call them, make sure you do mention this channel so they do waive the setup fees if you decide to go forward with them. But thanks so much for joining us. Steve Poplar and Jonathan Rose of Genesis Gold. We will see you guys later.